Cathy Thomas. I've been cooking for decades, teaching cooking and writing about food, chefs, and culinary trends, both in newspapers and magazines. I love cooking great food, the smell, the taste, the texture. Along the way, I've collected some recipes that I see as trusted old friends. In that category is the candy box cake, a deliciously rich, almost flourless chocolate cake that's adorned to look like a box of chocolate. Perfect for parties, showers, and tea time. Really, anytime, even in a darn quarantine. Start by prepping the cake pan. Now, I'm using a heart-shaped pan today, but you could use a square 8-inch pan or a 9-inch square pan. This heart measures at the widest part is 8.5 inches. So we're gonna start by preparing the parchment that's gonna go in the bottom. There's fancy ways to do this, but I think the easiest way is to fold the parchment in half and then press it down halfway, and then take your finger and make a mark where you want to cut. Now, it isn't going to be exactly perfect, but it doesn't need to be. These are cake circles. Notice that it's grease-proof on top. Now, this is going to go on top of the pan and get turned over to serve and move the cake. Let's trace a heart. Pencil in hand. You want to cut it out just a little bit smaller than where your lines are. So now we just want to grease and flour the pan, and then some flour. I want to tap this so that I get the sides as well as the bottom. I'm going to go to the trash. I'm going to tap it to remove any excess flour. I'm just pressing that parchment down in. Okay, the batter. Pecans add so much flavor and texture to this cake. You want to grind them into something like a course meal. And I find the easiest way to get them just how I want them is to do the bursts on the food processor. All-purpose flour, and let's work on the chocolate. Any bittersweet chocolate you like. The one that I often turn to is this Belgian chocolate from Trader Joe's. Start by giving it a good thunk on the counter. And that breaks it up so that I get pieces like this. You'll notice that I'm doing this over either parchment paper or paper towel, because then I can pick the whole darn thing up and dump it in the pan, and I don't lose any chocolate onto my cutting board. Butter. So now I've got it on low heat. What I like to do is melt about half of this, and then I stop, turn off the heat, and stir it to melt everything else. The smell of butter and chocolate, it's really therapeutic. When I studied cooking all those decades ago, they said never, ever, ever put water in chocolate. So now I'm going to add a little water to this. I'm going to transfer it into a bowl. And now we're going to stir in granulated sugar, brown sugar. I'm just going to set that aside to cool. And while it's cooling, I'm going to go ahead and separate some eggs. The easiest way is really to use your fingertips, but I'm doing the side-to-side technique here. I'm going to come back to the chocolate, the mixture of nuts and flour. If you want to, put in about a tablespoon of rum or orange liqueur or raspberry liqueur. And now I'm going to beat these egg whites. And you want to start at low speed. When it starts to get frothy, put in a teaspoon of sugar and start it on high. Lovely. And I noticed over to my left, my egg yolks. Those need to go in this batter too. Glad I didn't forget. I add about 1/3 of those egg whites. And this will just start to lighten up the batter a little. When you fold, you go down towards the center and go over the top. In goes the rest of the whites. Try not to deflate the volume that those whites are giving to the batter. This is going to go into a 350-degree preheated oven, the bottom rack 1/3 of the way up, and it's going to be ready in about 20 minutes. It's going to be a little soft in the middle, and as it cools, the chocolate tightens up. Into the oven it goes. Okay, now we're going to make this beautiful chocolate butter icing. It's going to form a glaze on top of the cake. So I've got some German chocolate, and I'm going to cut it crosswise into like little sticks into the top of a double boiler. We're going to melt this. Why German chocolate? This cake has two originators. One was Flo Breaker, who's a renowned San Francisco baker, and I like her recipe for the cake. But when it comes to the icing, I turn to Simone Beck. Simone Beck was Julia Child's partner in writing version 1 and version 2 of Mastering the Art of French Cooking. And this is from a cake recipe in her first cookbook she wrote solo. She liked the sweetness of the German chocolate. It still has high cacao, but she liked the balance of flavors. Now, I always thought German chocolate meant it was made in Germany. But I looked it up last night. Guess what? It's named after the baker who created it, whose last name was German. So there you go, German's chocolate. I'm going to add a powdered sugar. And it's going to kind of make a mucky looking mess. But don't give up. Time to start adding the butter, a little bit at a time. We're almost there. In case there's some condensation on the bottom of the pan, just kind of wipe that dry. I'm going to scoot it over the side and catch it with a spatula. Now the candy. I like to use creams so that it's easier to cut. Now this masterpiece has to dry and set up before you can move it. But because I have that cardboard on the bottom, it is completely portable. Candy box chocolate cake. Here's a quick tip from Melissa's. Salads that showcase lentils can be delicious, especially when the tasty legumes team with a mixture of raw vegetables and are tossed with vinaigrette. Ready-to-use lentils that are packaged in cryovac and tucked into a box make it easy and quick to prepare. There's no need to drain these. We just simply get them out of their package and separate them with clean fingertips. The first thing to do is make a vinaigrette. And we're going to make a very easy one here with a little Dijon mustard, about a tablespoon, vinegar, and you can use any kind of vinegar you're crazy about. I'm using a white wine vinegar here. We want some salt and pepper, olive oil. And I'm going to thin this out with a smidgen of water. Cherry tomatoes that have been cut in half, about a half a cup of chopped red onion, some diced carrot, and mind you, this is just a suggestion. You can use whatever vegetables you like. I like cucumber, so I'm going to put some cucumber in, and I'm simply going to zebra this. This is an English cucumber, so the skin is very thin. I'm just going to cut this in half horizontally, and then lengthwise in thirds. And that goes into our bowl. Some fresh fennel. Trim off the end and cut it in half. If there's a really thick core, I take that out and then cut it in half like so. I also like to put in some green olives, fresh parsley, and then maybe some of these fennel fronds. The star of the show, the lentils. And we'll give this a good toss and then give it a taste. It's gorgeous. But more importantly, it was easy and it's delicious. The produce aisles are filled with so many delicious choices. Try something new, have an adventure.